The sound of metal scraping against the earth jolted Hank out of his routine. He paused, gripping the steering wheel of his old Chevy tractor, as confusion settled over him. The blade had hit something heavier than a stone. Curiosity piqued, he turned off the engine and clambered down, the familiar scent of damp soil filling his nose. Hank wiped the sweat from his brow and knelt beside the trench, his heart racing with unexpected anticipation. The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, while cicadas buzzed in the background, their song creating a soundtrack to his discovery. As he cleared the dirt away, a glimpse of something metallic caught his eye. He unearthed a rusty box adorned with peeling stickers that read, "Property of County, do not open." A chill ran down his spine, not from fear but from an instinctive recognition that he had stumbled upon something significant, something that had been buried long before he ever set foot on this land. His breath caught in his throat as he pried it open, revealing its contents. A couple of identification tags, a weathered civil defense radio, and an envelope sealed with the words, "Evidence, Flood of 1973. The radio had likely seen better days, its knobs caked with dust and its surface scarred by time. What stories did it hold? What lives had it once connected? With trembling hands, he reached for his cell phone, but the signal was weak out here in the fields. Instead, he dialed 911 from the landline in his farmhouse, not out of fear but out of respect. Whatever lay in that box belonged to a community, a collective memory wrapped in forgotten history. The operator's voice felt distant, almost surreal as Hank described his find. As he leaned against the truck's bumper, waiting for the sheriff to arrive, memories of his father's stories washed over him like the summer rain. His dad had spoken of the flood that consumed fences and friendships, a time when neighbors banded together, not as heroes but as human beings bound by shared hardship. Hank could almost hear his father's gravelly voice recounting tales of bravery and compassion, of people helping one another in their time of need. The afternoon turned to dusk, and the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. As Hank stood there, he felt the weight of the past pressing down on him. This wasn't just an old box buried in the dirt. It was a fragment of history, one that deserved to be remembered. He thought about Jacob Reed, a name he had heard in hushed tones during community gatherings, a man who had given himself to the service of others. And as the soft glow of the approaching sheriff's headlights pierced the encroaching darkness, Hank realized he was standing at the crossroads of his own conscience. Would he honor the memories held within that box? Or would he let them fade into oblivion? The choice lay before him, heavy as the earth he had tilled for years. Hank had built his life around routine. Each morning began with the crow of a rooster, followed by the soft rustle of cornstalks swaying in the breeze. He would rise early, brew a pot of coffee strong enough to wake the dead, and sit on the porch watching the sun spill over the horizon like golden syrup. The world felt fresh and full of promise, but today, it was tinged with an unexpected heaviness. His wife, Linda, had already prepared breakfast when he entered the kitchen, the aroma of bacon and eggs filling the air. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she remarked, raising an eyebrow as she flipped the eggs. Hank forced a smile, trying to shake off the unease. "Just found something interesting out in the field," he replied, taking a seat at the worn wooden table. The table had seen countless family meals, its surface marked with scratches and stains, each one a memory of laughter or a moment of tension. Linda served him breakfast, her eyes searching his face for answers. "What kind of interesting?" she probed, her tone light but laced with curiosity. He hesitated, not wanting to burden her with the weight of the discovery just yet. Instead, he spoke of the corn yield, the weather, the usual farm talk. He needed time to process what he had found before sharing it with anyone. After breakfast, Hank headed back to the fields, the sun now high in the sky. The tractor hummed beneath him as he worked the land, but his mind was elsewhere. The rusty box kept replaying in his thoughts, the memories it carried taunting him like an unfinished puzzle. What had happened during the flood in 1973? What stories lay behind Jacob Reed's name? As he cultivated the fields, Hank felt the warmth of the sun on his back and the earth beneath him. Each row of corn stood tall, a testament to the hard work he poured into the land. Yet today the soil felt different, charged with a sense of history, almost alive with the stories of those who had come before him. The shadows of the past loomed large, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of something important. The day wore on, with the sound of the tractor blending into the background hum of the countryside. He stopped for a moment, wiping sweat from his brow as he gazed across the expansive fields. They were more than just crops. They were his heritage, the legacy handed down from generations past. Each stalk of corn stood tall, a testament to hard work, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of the land. After hours of labor, the sun began to dip low in the sky, casting golden rays through the cornfields. Hank parked the tractor and trudged toward the dilapidated barn, where he had spent countless hours mending fences and caring for livestock. The barn's wooden beams creaked as he pushed the door open, the familiar scent of hay and earth wrapping around him like an old friend. He rummaged through the shelves, searching for anything that might help him understand the contents of the box. Old newspapers, photographs, and dusty tools lay piled together, remnants of a life once lived. His fingers traced over the faded headlines of articles about the flood, stories of heroism and heartbreak. Each page told a tale of the community coming together, helping their neighbors, and rebuilding their lives after the devastation. Tucked away in a corner, he found a photo album, its cover worn but intact. Opening it revealed a treasure trove of memories, images of family gatherings, harvests, and community events. He paused at a picture of a young man standing beside a makeshift raft, a group of people gathered around him, all smiles and laughter. Hank squinted at the face, a flicker of recognition sparking in his memory. Jacob Reed, he murmured, the name slipping from his lips. His father had spoken of Jacob with a reverence that had always intrigued Hank. The stories painted him as a quiet hero, someone who never sought recognition, but was always there when needed. With the album in hand, Hank returned to the porch, the sun now a deep orange on the horizon, casting a warm glow over their small farmhouse. He found Linda sitting on the steps, knitting quietly, the rhythmic click of her needles mingling with the sounds of evening crickets. "Where have you been?" she asked, glancing up with a smile. "Just looking for some answers," he replied, settling beside her. He opened the photo album and shared the images of the flood, the faces of neighbors coming together, and the spirit of community that shone through even in the darkest times. Linda leaned in, her interest piqued as she examined the photographs. "I remember hearing about that flood," she mused. "My parents used to talk about how everyone came together to help each other. It's amazing how those times can bring out the best in people." "Yeah," Hank agreed, his heart swelling with pride for the community he called home. "But what about Jacob? He was right in the thick of it. I found some of his things today in the field." "What do you mean?" Linda asked, her brows knitting together in concern. He recounted the discovery of the box, the radio, and the identification tags. As he spoke, he could see the realization wash over her face, the significance of their find, the history embedded in those rusted objects. "Do you think we should notify someone?" Linda asked, her voice steady but cautious. Hank leaned back, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "I think we have to. These items belong to someone. They're part of our history, part of this community's story." The conversation lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken thoughts and possibilities. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, and the first stars began to twinkle in the indigo sky. Hank felt a stirring within, a sense of duty to honor the past, to connect the threads of history that intertwined their lives. Later that evening, as they prepared for bed, Hank's mind raced with thoughts of Jacob and the flood. He could almost hear the distant echoes of laughter and cries for help, the sounds of a community rising from the depths of despair. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with his uncertainty. Would he be able to face the memories that came with unearthing the past? Would the community embrace this piece of their history, or would it bring to the surface old wounds that had yet to heal? In the quiet of the night, surrounded by darkness, Hank resolved to find out. Tomorrow, he would reach out to Sheriff Thompson and share the discovery. He would honor Jacob Reed and the countless others who had faced the flood together, unearthing not just objects, but the stories they held, a tapestry of resilience and togetherness woven into the fabric of their lives. As he drifted into sleep, a sense of purpose enveloped him, the echoes of the past whispering promises of connection and remembrance. Tomorrow would bring the dawn of new discoveries, and with it the chance to bridge the gap between history and the present, to ensure that the stories of those who came before would never be forgotten. The following morning arrived with a crispness that stirred something in Hank. The air was fresh and the sky was a brilliant blue. He went about his morning routine, but the heaviness of yesterday's discovery lingered in his mind like a shadow. After breakfast, he found himself pacing the porch, his heart racing with anticipation. "Are you ready?" Linda asked, stepping outside, a warm cup of coffee in her hands. "No, not really," Hank admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I can't shake the feeling that we need to do this. It's not just about the box. It's about what it represents." Linda nodded, her expression supportive. "Then let's go. I'll drive." They climbed into the truck, the engine rumbling to life as Hank gripped the steering wheel. As they drove into town, memories of community gatherings flashed through his mind, the annual harvest festival, church potlucks, and the laughter that echoed through the streets. This town was more than just a place, it was a living entity, shaped by the lives of its residents. Arriving at the sheriff's office, Hank took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling heavily on his shoulders. Inside, the walls were adorned with photographs of past events, trophies from youth sports teams and community awards. Sheriff Thompson emerged from his office, a tall man with a weathered face that smiled warmly at them. "Hank, Linda, what brings you two here?" he asked, gesturing for them to come in. Hank swallowed hard, the box's contents swirling in his mind. "We found something in the field yesterday," he started, the words catching in his throat. "I think it's important." Sheriff Thompson's demeanor shifted, curiosity piqued. "What did you find?" Hank took a moment to gather his thoughts. "A box. It belonged to Jacob Reed, I think. Inside were identification tags, a civil defense radio, and an envelope labeled Evidence, Flood of 1973. The sheriff's expression grew serious, his brows furrowing as he processed the information. "Jacob Reed, that's quite a find. He was a good man, one of the first to volunteer during the flood. Never wanted recognition, just wanted to help." Hank felt a sense of affirmation wash over him, as if he were on the right path. "We thought it was important to bring this to you. It's part of our history, our community's history." Sheriff Thompson nodded, a look of understanding crossing his face. "You're right. Let's take a look." Hank and Linda followed him into the office, where he laid out the contents of the box on the desk. The civil defense radio sat prominently, its faded knobs and dusty exterior telling tales of a time long gone. The identification tags bore Jacob's name, a connection to the past that felt almost sacred. "I'll make sure these items are preserved," Sheriff Thompson said, his tone respectful. "They belong to the whole community. Jacob's legacy is still alive, and it's important that people remember what he did." Hank felt a surge of relief, knowing they had made the right decision. "Thank you, Sheriff. I want people to know the stories behind these items, to remember." "Trust me, they will," Thompson replied. "I'll coordinate with the local historical society. This deserves to be honored." As they left the sheriff's office, Hank's heart felt lighter. The weight of the past had transformed into a promise of remembrance, a commitment to honor those who had come before them. The drive home felt different. The world outside the window seemed brighter, more alive. Hank glanced at Linda, her expression radiating pride and support. "We did the right thing," he said, a smile breaking across his face. "Yes, we did," she replied, reaching for his hand. When they arrived home, Hank felt an urge to reconnect with his land. He grabbed a shovel and headed to the field where he had found the box. Kneeling down, he felt the cool soil beneath his fingers, the earth that sustained their lives. "Thank you," he whispered to the ground, a silent acknowledgement of the stories intertwined with the soil. He began to dig, not just to unearth more artifacts, but to connect with the history that lay beneath him. With each scoop, he felt a sense of belonging, a reminder that he was part of a larger narrative, one of struggle, resilience, and hope. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Hank stood up and took a deep breath. The air was filled with the scent of damp earth and the distant sound of crickets beginning their evening chorus. He felt a profound sense of peace settle over him, a realization that they were not alone. The spirits of those who had come before still walked beside them, woven into the fabric of their lives. He turned to the horizon, where the last rays of sunlight dipped below the fields, and whispered, "We are all part of this story." It was a promise, a vow to honor the past and ensure that the spirit of community, the essence of connection, would continue to thrive in the hearts of those who lived on this land. In that moment, surrounded by the whispers of the earth, Hank understood that the weight of memory was not a burden to carry but a treasure to cherish. Each day would bring new opportunities to connect with their history, to honor the sacrifices made, and to celebrate the lives that had shaped their community. And as long as he was alive, he would ensure those stories would never fade away. The days following Hank's discovery of Jacob Reed's box transformed into a whirlwind of activity and reflection. Each morning, he awoke with the sunrise, feeling the weight of history press down on him, urging him to delve deeper into the past. With renewed determination, he began visiting the local library, a modest building filled with dusty books and faded photographs. The librarian, Mrs. Hargrove, welcomed him with a warm smile. "You're here for the flood, aren't you?" she inquired, her eyes twinkling. "Yes," he replied. "I found some items that belonged to Jacob Reed, and I want to learn more about what happened back then." Mrs. Hargrove nodded, her expression turning serious. "The flood of '73 was a turning point for this community. It brought people together in ways you wouldn't believe." She led him to a back room filled with archives. Photographs lined the walls depicting families wading through water, volunteers distributing supplies, and makeshift shelters that sprang up to accommodate those who lost their homes. Hank could feel the energy in the room, the echoes of laughter and cries for help lingering in the air. "I've collected stories from those who lived through it," Mrs. Hargrove said, pulling out a box filled with handwritten notes and clippings. Each story painted a vivid picture of community spirit, of neighbors helping neighbors. One particular story caught his eye, a letter from a woman named Clara, detailing how she and her husband opened their home to displaced families. "We didn't have much," she wrote, "but we had each other, and that was enough to get through the storm." Hank felt a kinship with Clara and the others. Their stories mirrored his own experiences of community engagement. He realized the flood wasn't just a moment in history, it was a testament to humanity's enduring spirit. After hours spent in the library, Hank returned home with a wealth of information swirling in his mind. He shared the stories with Linda, who listened intently, her eyes wide with emotion. "These are the stories that need to be told," she urged, her voice thick with conviction. "We can't let them fade away." That night, Hank lay in bed, unable to sleep. The weight of the past pressed down on him, but it was a comforting burden, one that urged him to keep digging, to honor those who had come before him. The following morning, Hank made his way to the local community center, where a meeting was scheduled to discuss the upcoming town celebration. As he entered the hall, familiar faces greeted him. Neighbors, friends, and community leaders, all gathered to discuss plans for the event. "Glad you could make it, Hank," said Mayor Carson. "We're planning a tribute to the flood survivors this year. It's about time we honored those who helped rebuild this community." Hank felt a rush of excitement mixed with apprehension. "I have something to share," he said, standing up. "I found some items that belong to Jacob Reed, and I think they should be part of the tribute. They tell a story that deserves to be remembered." The room fell silent, all eyes on Hank. Jacob was a humble man, but he played an important role during the flood. "I believe we can honor his memory by showcasing these items and sharing their stories." Mayor Carson nodded thoughtfully. "That's a great idea, Hank. We could create a display at the celebration and perhaps invite some flood survivors to speak." The discussion grew animated as others chimed in, brainstorming ideas for the tribute. Hank's heart swelled with pride as he watched his neighbors come together, united by a shared purpose. In the days leading up to the celebration, Hank dedicated himself to preparing the display. He spent hours gathering items, arranging photographs, and compiling stories. Linda helped him organize the materials, her enthusiasm infectious as they worked side by side. As the day of the celebration approached, the town buzzed with excitement. Banners were hung, booths were set up, and the smell of freshly baked goods wafted through the air. Finally, the day arrived, and the community center was transformed into a vibrant display of photographs and memorabilia. Hank stood behind the display, his heart racing as families approached, pointing at photographs and reminiscing about their own experiences during the flood. As the afternoon wore on, Mayor Carson took to the stage. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate our community and honor those who helped us rise from the flood of '73. We remember not just the challenges we faced, but the strength and unity that emerged from them." Hank felt a swell of pride as the mayor spoke, knowing their efforts were paying off. After the speech, several flood survivors shared their experiences, recounting moments of fear, courage, and camaraderie. Hank listened intently, captivated by their tales. Clara, the woman from the letter, stepped up to the microphone, her voice shaky but resolute. "When the flood hit, we didn't have much," she began, glancing around the crowd. "But we had each other. We opened our doors to anyone in need, and in doing so, we found a family among strangers. That time taught us that while the flood may have taken our homes, it could never take our spirit." As the crowd erupted in applause, Hank felt tears welling in his eyes. Clara's words resonated deeply, echoing what it meant to be part of a community. The celebration continued with music, laughter, and shared memories. Hank mingled with neighbors, exchanging stories and learning from others. Each interaction felt like a thread woven into the fabric of their community, strengthening the bonds forged through shared experiences. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the festivities, Hank stood back and took it all in. The laughter, the stories, the connections. It was everything he had hoped for and more. In that moment, he realized the box he had unearthed was more than just a collection of objects. It had sparked a transformation within the community, igniting a fire to remember, honor, and celebrate their shared history. As the last song faded into the evening air, Hank approached the display one last time. He looked at the items, the identification tags, the worn radio, the photographs, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had become symbols of strength, resilience, and unity. He whispered quietly to himself, "Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for reminding us who we are." And for Hank, this celebration was not just an event. It was a promise, a commitment to carry the stories of the past into the future, ensuring that the spirit of community endured and thrived, no matter the challenges that lay ahead. After the celebration, life began to shift in ways Hank could not have predicted. The stories shared ignited conversations that had been dormant for too long. Neighbors who had lived next to each other for years began to share their own experiences and memories of the flood, creating a rich tapestry of narratives that enriched their community's history. Hank was invited to several gatherings, where he noticed that many people were eager to share tales of kindness and courage from that fateful summer. One evening, at a gathering at the Petersons, Hank found himself sitting around a fire pit with several neighbors. The flames flickered as stories flowed, and he thrilled at the memories being recounted. "Remember the time Jacob and I decided to create makeshift rafts to help people cross the flooded streets?" chuckled Mr. Peterson. We thought we were the heroes of the day, paddling around with our old wooden pallets. Everyone laughed, and the warmth of camaraderie enveloped the group. Jacob always knew how to lighten the mood, Mrs. Peterson added, her voice tinged with nostalgia. Even when things were dire, he could make you smile. As stories continued to pour forth, Hank felt a growing sense of connection to these shared experiences. Each tale reaffirmed the importance of community and the bonds that form during adversity. It was clear that Jacob Reed's legacy lived on, not just in the items Hank had found, but in the hearts of those who remembered him. The local historical society, inspired by the success of the tribute, decided to organize a series of events focused on documenting the town's history. They approached Hank to help coordinate these efforts, recognizing the passion he had shown in preserving the stories of the flood. Hank eagerly accepted, feeling this was his calling. He began working closely with Mrs. Hargrove and other society members, gathering stories, photographs, and artifacts to create an exhibit dedicated to the flood of '73. He also organized interviews with survivors, giving them a platform to share their narratives. As the months rolled on, Hank found himself immersed in this project, visiting homes across town, notebooks in hand, recording the rich tapestry of memories that defined their community. Each conversation was an opportunity to learn, connect, and understand the depth of resilience that had shaped their lives. One afternoon, he visited Clara, the woman whose letter had touched him deeply. As they sat in her living room, surrounded by family photographs and mementos, Hank felt a profound sense of gratitude for the stories she shared. Clara spoke of chaos during the flood, the sound of rushing water, and the determination of neighbors banding together to help those in need. "I remember one family who lost everything," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "They showed up at our door, their faces etched with fear. But we made room for them. We didn't have much, but we had enough space and love to share." Hank listened intently. "What do you think motivated people to help each other during that time?" Clara smiled softly, her eyes reflecting wisdom. "I think it's human nature, Hank. When faced with hardship, we either retreat into ourselves or reach out. During the flood, people chose to reach out. They recognized that we're stronger together, and that's what carried us through." Her words resonated with Hank, reinforcing the belief that community bonds are forged in moments of vulnerability and shared struggle. He left Clara's house with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to ensure that her story, and the stories of many others, would not just be remembered, but celebrated. As the exhibit date approached, Hank and the Historical Society worked tirelessly to prepare. They transformed the local community center into a vibrant display of photographs, artifacts, and recorded stories. The walls were adorned with images of the flood, showcasing not just devastation but also acts of kindness that emerged. Finally, the day of the exhibit arrived. Hank stood at the entrance, his heart pounding. Families began to filter in, eyes widening as they took in the display. The excitement in the room was palpable as people reflected on their shared history, connecting through the stories they had uncovered. As the night drew to a close, Hank stood in the center of the room, witnessing the conversations and connections blossoming. The exhibit not only honored the past but sparked a renewed sense of community spirit. He couldn't help but think of Jacob Reed and the legacy he had left behind. Hank felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing they had honored him and all others who had been part of that story. As he looked around the room, he saw the future of the community, young people eager to learn, to connect, and to carry forward the stories of those who had come before them. Hank left the community center that night with a heart full of hope. The echoes of laughter and shared memories resonated in his mind, a beautiful reminder that while the flood had been a challenge, it had also been a catalyst for connection, resilience, and love. As he drove home, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment, the box that had unearthed a wealth of stories, the connections he had forged, and the strength of the community woven through those narratives. He felt a profound sense of gratitude for the past and a commitment to the future. Upon arriving home, he found Linda waiting for him on the porch. "How did it go?" she asked, jumping up to embrace him. It was incredible, Hank replied, holding her close. People shared stories, connected with one another, and celebrated our past. I truly believe we've created something meaningful. Linda smiled, her eyes shining with pride. I knew you could do it. You've brought our community together in a way that's going to leave a lasting impact. They sat on the porch together, watching the stars twinkle above. Hank felt a sense of peace wash over him, knowing that they had honored the past while nurturing the bonds that would carry them into the future. As he looked out at the land surrounding their home, he thought about how intertwined their lives were with the stories buried beneath the soil. The community had faced challenges, but they had emerged stronger, united by their shared history and resilience. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by the whispers of the earth, Hank understood that their story would continue to unfold, one moment at a time, and as long as he was alive, he would ensure that those stories would be told, that the spirit of community would thrive, and that the memory of Jacob Reed, and all those who had come before, would never fade away. And for Hank, that was enough. As the weeks passed after the exhibit, the sense of community that had blossomed continued to grow. Hank found himself woven into a fabric of renewed connections, each thread representing a story, a laugh shared over coffee, or a memory recalled over dinner. The flood of '73, once a distant echo in the town's history, had become a living narrative, alive in conversations and gatherings. One crisp autumn day, Hank received a call from Sheriff Thompson. "Hank, can you meet me at the station? I think you'll want to hear this," the sheriff said, urgency lacing his voice. Hank's heart raced. He hurriedly made his way to the sheriff's office, curiosity and concern mingling within him. When he arrived, Sheriff Thompson was waiting in his office, his expression serious. "I've been going through some old files and records from the flood, and I came across something I think you should see," he said, pulling out a dusty folder. As Hank sat down, the sheriff opened the folder and revealed a series of photographs and documents. "These were taken right after the flood," Thompson explained, pointing to a photo of a group of volunteers, including Jacob Reed, working tirelessly to help their neighbors. What struck me was the amount of help that came from all directions. It wasn't just our town. We received aid from neighboring communities. People came together in ways we didn't even document. Hank leaned closer, captivated. "These are incredible," he said, flipping through the images. There were snapshots of local high school students loading supplies onto trucks, families cooking meals for those in need, and even a photo of Clara and her husband welcoming people into their home. "Here's the kicker," Thompson continued, pulling out a newspaper clipping. "This article was published a few days after the flood. It mentions a fund that was established to help families rebuild. It had nearly doubled within weeks thanks to donations from across the region." Hank's eyes widened. "I had no idea. This is such an important piece of our history." "It is," the sheriff agreed. "And it got me thinking. We should organize a small gathering to share these findings, maybe even reach out to some of those who contributed. It would give us a chance to recognize the broader community that stood with us during that dark time." Hank felt a surge of excitement. "That's a brilliant idea. I'd love to help coordinate it. We could even invite people from neighboring towns." Over the next few weeks, Hank and Sheriff Thompson worked tirelessly to organize the gathering. They reached out to neighboring towns, inviting anyone who had been involved during the flood. As Hank spread the word, he marveled at the enthusiasm the event generated. Stories began to flow, not just from his town, but from those nearby who had also experienced the flood's devastation and the kindness that followed. On the day of the gathering, the community center buzzed with energy. Tables were lined with photographs, artifacts, and memorabilia from not only their town but also neighboring communities that had rallied to help during the flood. Hank felt an overwhelming sense of pride as he set up the display, knowing that they were honoring a collective history. As guests began to arrive, familiar faces mingled with newcomers. Hank spotted Clara and her husband, along with several volunteers from neighboring towns who had come to share their stories. The warmth and camaraderie were palpable, reminding him of the spirit that had emerged during the flood. The gathering commenced with Sheriff Thompson opening the event, welcoming everyone and introducing the purpose of the day. Today, we're not just remembering our past, we're celebrating the bonds that form in times of need. The flood taught us that we are stronger together, and I'm grateful to see so many of you here to honor that spirit. As the event unfolded, stories were shared that spanned decades. Neighbors recounted how they had come together, how they had helped those who had lost their homes, and how strangers had become friends in the aftermath of chaos. Each story added to the rich tapestry Hank had come to cherish. One woman, who had traveled from a neighboring town, spoke about how her community had sent truckloads of supplies and volunteers to help. "We didn't think twice about it. It was just what you do. You help. You step up for your neighbors. We may not have known anyone in your town, but when tragedy strikes, it doesn't matter. We're all human." Hank felt a lump in his throat as he listened, the truth of her words resonating deeply. He realized that while the flood had caused heartache, it had also shown the world the power of compassion and connection. At the end of the day, as the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the community center, Hank stepped back to take it all in. He saw laughter, friendship, and a sense of belonging that enveloped everyone present. Connections formed not only among longtime residents, but also between those who had once been strangers. Feeling a hand on his shoulder, he turned to find Sheriff Thompson beside him. "You did great work here, Hank. This is what community looks like." Hank smiled, humility washing over him. "I couldn't have done it without you and everyone who contributed. This is truly a shared history." As the gathering wound down, Hank felt a sense of closure wash over him. The flood's legacy was no longer just a painful memory, but a reminder of hope, resilience, and the bonds of humanity. In the following days, Hank continued to reflect on the themes of connection and compassion. He realized that the stories of the flood had not only transformed how he viewed his town, but had also reshaped his understanding of community. The past was no longer a distant shadow. It had become a living, breathing part of their daily lives. Inspired by the stories he had heard, Hank decided to start a community newsletter dedicated to sharing personal experiences, local history, and upcoming events. He envisioned it as a way to keep the spirit of camaraderie alive, connecting residents and encouraging them to share their lives and experiences. With Linda's support, he began drafting the first edition. They filled it with stories from the flood, snippets from the gathering, and interviews with residents reflecting on their experiences and memories. They included sections for upcoming events, local happenings, and even a space for children to share their artwork or stories. As the first edition was printed and distributed, Hank felt a thrill of excitement. He hoped that it would foster connections and remind everyone of the collective history that bound them together. Over the following months, the newsletter became a staple in the community. Residents eagerly awaited each edition, sharing their own stories and contributing to the growing narrative of their town. Hank's idea had flourished, serving as both a platform for reflection and a means of celebration. One evening, as he and Linda sat on their porch, Hank reflected on how far they had come. "It's incredible, isn't it?" he said, watching the stars twinkle above. "All it took was a little push to get people talking about our history and experiences." Linda smiled, her eyes soft with affection. "You've worked hard to create connections, Hank. I'm proud of how you've brought our community together, honoring the past while building a stronger future." Hank felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey they had embarked on together. He knew that while the flood had been a challenge, it had also been a blessing in disguise, unearthing stories and connections that would shape their lives for years to come. As he sat beside Linda, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and commitment to his community. He understood that their history would continue to unfold, one story at a time, and that the spirit of togetherness would endure, binding them together through every challenge they faced. In that quiet moment, Hank whispered a silent promise to himself, to always cherish the stories of those who came before, to honor the resilience of the community, and to ensure that the legacy of Jacob Reed and all those who had faced adversity would never be forgotten. The journey of remembrance was far from over. It was only just beginning, and he was ready to embrace it with open arms, As the seasons changed in the small town, Hank found himself reflecting on the journey he had embarked upon since discovering Jacob Reed's box. The warmth of summer gave way to the crispness of autumn, and the vibrant colors of falling leaves seemed to mirror the renewed spirit within the community. It was a time of harvest, not just of crops, but of stories, memories, and connections. Hank's newsletter had taken off, and each edition was met with enthusiasm. Neighbors eagerly submitted their stories, and the pages were filled with personal anecdotes, accounts of resilience and photographs that captured the essence of their shared history. The stories woven together created a beautiful tapestry that celebrated their community, and Hank cherished the sense of belonging that blossomed from it. One day, as Hank was putting together the latest newsletter, he received an unexpected phone call from Clara.
"Hank, I have an idea," she said,
her voice bubbling with excitement.
"What if we organized a community potluck? We could invite everyone to bring their favorite dish and share stories about their families and traditions. It would be a wonderful way to continue fostering those connections."
Hank's heart swelled at the thought.
"That sounds incredible, Clara. We could feature recipes from the flood survivors, highlighting their resilience and the way they came together."
"Yes, and we could share the stories behind the dishes too," Clara added. "Food has a way of binding us together, and it's a perfect opportunity to celebrate our community." With Clara's enthusiasm fueling him, Hank quickly set to work organizing the potluck. He reached out to the community center and scheduled a date, then began promoting the event through the newsletter and word of mouth. Excitement buzzed through the town, and as the day approached, he felt a growing anticipation. On the day of the potluck, the community center was transformed into a vibrant space filled with the enticing aroma of various dishes. Long tables were laden with food, hearty casseroles, fresh salads, sweet pies, and of course, Clara's famous apple crisp. The walls were adorned with photographs from the flood, alongside images of community gatherings that celebrated resilience and togetherness. As people filed in, hugs and laughter filled the room. Hank was overwhelmed by the turnout. Neighbors greeted each other warmly, sharing stories and reminiscing about the past. Children darted between tables, giggling as they prepared to sample the array of dishes. Once everyone had gathered, Hank stepped up to the podium, his heart racing. "Thank you all for coming together today. This potluck is not just about food. It's about celebrating our stories, our traditions, and the bonds that unite us. Let's honor the past while enjoying the flavors of our community." He invited Clara to share a few words, and she stepped up, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Food is a universal language," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "It tells the stories of our families, our struggles, and our triumphs. Today, let's share not just our dishes, but the memories and love that go into them." One by one, attendees began to share their stories as they introduced their dishes. A woman named Ruth spoke about her grandmother's recipe for chicken and dumplings that had been passed down for generations. "During tough times, we always turn to this dish. It's not just food, it's a reminder of family, love, and resilience," she said. Another neighbor, Tom, shared the story behind his grandmother's peach pie. "The summer after the flood, we had a bumper crop of peaches. My grandmother insisted we use them to bring joy back into our lives. We baked pies and delivered them to every neighbor, reminding us that even after loss, sweetness can be found again." As stories flowed, Hank felt a sense of warmth enveloping the room. Laughter mingled with tears as memories were shared, and the potluck became a celebration of not just food but the spirit of community that had emerged from adversity. As the sun began to set outside, casting a golden glow through the windows, the mood in the room shifted into a deeper reflection. Clara stood up again, holding a piece of paper in her hands. "I want to read something I wrote about the flood," she said, her voice steady. "It's a reminder that we are never alone in our struggles." Hank listened intently as Clara recited her words, honoring those who had faced the flood and the spirit of togetherness that had carried them through. Her words resonated with everyone present, a poignant reminder of their shared experiences. After Clara finished, A hush fell over the room, and then an eruption of applause followed. Hank felt tears prick at his eyes, realizing that this gathering had become a profound moment of connection for everyone involved. As the evening drew to a close, Hank looked around the room, witnessing the smiles, the laughter, and the renewed bonds among neighbors. He realized that this potluck was more than just a meal. It was a celebration of resilience, love, and the strength that comes from community. In the days that followed, as Hank reflected on the potluck, he felt a sense of fulfillment that he had not experienced before. The connections formed during that gathering were not fleeting. They were lasting. Neighbors began to visit each other more, share meals, and engage in conversations that deepened their sense of belonging. As winter approached, Hank continued to share stories through the newsletter, highlighting the potluck's success. He encouraged residents to submit their favorite winter recipes to keep the spirit of connection alive. The community had embraced the idea, and submissions poured in, each one accompanied by a personal story that illustrated their heritage and resilience. One evening, as he sat at the kitchen table with Linda, Hank looked through the recipes that had come in. "I can't believe how many people have contributed," he said, his heart swelling with pride. "It's like a recipe book of our community's history." Linda smiled, her eyes shining. "You've created something beautiful, Hank. It's not just about the food. It's about the connections and memories that make us who we are." As winter settled in, Hank felt a renewed sense of purpose. He decided to organize a winter celebration to showcase the recipes and stories gathered through the newsletter. "Let's gather for another potluck, but this time, let's celebrate the warmth of our community during the colder months," he suggested. Linda eagerly helped him plan the event. They contacted local musicians to come and play, adding an element of joy and festivity to the celebration. Hank felt a thrill of excitement as he envisioned the community coming together once more to share food, stories, and laughter. As the date approached, he was filled with anticipation. The winter celebration promised to be a heartwarming event, a reminder that even in the coldest of seasons, the warmth of community would shine brightly. On the night of the celebration, the community center was adorned with twinkling lights, and tables were lined with steaming dishes, each one telling a story. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and chatter as everyone gathered, eager to partake in the festivities. As Hank welcomed everyone, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey they had taken together. The community had come alive, not just in response to the flood, but in their commitment to support one another through all of life's ups and downs. Throughout the evening, stories flowed, music played, and the spirit of togetherness enveloped the room. Hank watched as neighbors connected, friendships blossomed, and laughter echoed off the walls. It was a celebration of resilience, love, and the beautiful tapestry of memories that bound them together. As the evening drew to a close, Hank felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had witnessed something special, a community that had risen from the ashes of hardship, now thriving in the warmth of shared experiences and connections. In that moment, he understood that the spirit of Jacob Reed lived on in the hearts of those around him, reminding them all that they were part of something much larger than themselves. And as long as he was alive, he would ensure that the stories of their past would never be forgotten, but instead cherished and celebrated for generations to come. As winter settled over the town, blanket upon blanket of snow transformed the familiar landscape into a serene wonderland. The community had embraced the seasonal chill with open arms, gathering for the winter celebration that had become a cherished tradition. Hank felt a warm glow of satisfaction as he watched the snowflakes dance through the air, the world outside his window glimmering with possibility. In the days leading up to the celebration, Hank and Linda prepared diligently, ensuring every detail was attended to. The community center would once again serve as the heart of their gathering, a place to share warmth, stories, and laughter. Hank had printed copies of the newsletter featuring winter recipes, each accompanied by personal anecdotes that beautifully illustrated the connection between food and community. On the night of the celebration, the community center was aglow with twinkling lights, casting a warm golden hue that contrasted with the cold outside. Tables filled with steaming dishes awaited the eager attendees. The scent of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, mingling with the aroma of hearty stews, sweet pastries, and fragrant hot cocoa. As the guests began to arrive, Hank felt a rush of gratitude. They were not just neighbors, they were friends, family, a tapestry of lives woven together by shared experiences. Laughter filled the room as old friends reunited, and new friendships blossomed amid the warm atmosphere. As the festivities began, Hank took a moment to step back and observe. He watched Clara at one table, animatedly sharing her famous apple crisp recipe with a group of children, her eyes sparkling as she spoke. Nearby, a group of men reminisced about their efforts during the flood, their laughter echoing warmly through the hall. The evening kicked off with music, and local musicians began to strum familiar tunes. The melodies wrapped around the room, inviting everyone to join in. Hank couldn't resist the urge to grab Linda's hand and pull her onto the dance floor. They swayed together, lost in the music, surrounded by the vibrant energy of their community. As the night wore on, Hank gathered everyone's attention to share a few words. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "This celebration is a testament to the resilience and strength of our community. The stories we share, the food we enjoy, and the connections we nurture all remind us of who we are." He paused, looking around at the smiling faces. "When we came together for the flood, we didn't just help each other. We formed bonds that have carried us through many seasons since. And tonight, as we embrace winter, let's continue to celebrate those connections that bind us." The crowd erupted into applause, and Hank felt a swell of pride. In that moment, he realized that their shared history had created a legacy that transcended the hardships they had faced. Stories of kindness, courage, and community spirit echoed through the hall, reinforcing the ties that bound them together. As the night continued, Hank invited others to share their own stories. One by one, neighbors stood up to recount their experiences and traditions, adding new layers to their collective narrative. Each story was like a thread, weaving a richer tapestry of their community's past. The atmosphere shifted when one of the flood survivors, an elderly man named Mr. Thompson, stood to speak. "You see," he began, his voice raspy with age but firm, "the flood took a lot from us, but it also taught us the greatest lesson, that we must stand together. There were nights I didn't know how I would rebuild, but I'll never forget the kindness of strangers who became friends." Tears glistened in the eyes of many as Mr. Thompson spoke, his words resonating with the collective memory of shared hardship. "And that spirit is alive in each of you tonight," he continued, a smile breaking through his solemnity. "Let's keep that spirit lit through every season." As he finished, an appreciative silence enveloped the room, followed by a thunderous applause. Hank felt a profound sense of connection to every person present. They were all part of this journey, a journey that had transformed pain into purpose and isolation into belonging. Later in the evening, while the music played softly in the background, Hank found himself chatting with Clara. "You know," she said, her eyes sparkling, "I think we should keep this going. We can have seasonal gatherings, not just for the winter, but for spring, summer, and fall. Each one could celebrate the unique stories of that season." Hank nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. This is just the beginning. We can create a tradition that honors our past and strengthens our future." As they spoke, Linda joined them, her face radiant with excitement. "What a wonderful idea. Imagine the stories we could share, the recipes, the memories." The three of them brainstormed ideas for the upcoming seasons, and Hank felt a sense of joy swell within him. Their community spirit was alive and thriving, and he was eager to nurture it further. As the celebration wound down, Hank took a moment to step outside, seeking a breath of fresh air. The chill of winter was invigorating, and he gazed up at the star-filled sky, feeling a deep sense of peace. The warmth of their gathering still lingered in his heart, a comforting reminder of the bonds that had been forged. In that quiet moment, Hank whispered a silent promise to himself, to always cherish the stories of those who came before and to honor the resilience of the community that surrounded him. He understood that their journey was ongoing, and as long as he was alive, he would ensure that their shared history would never be forgotten. As he returned to the community center, the laughter and music welcomed him back. With a smile on his face and hope in his heart, he knew that the spirit of Jacob Reed and the countless others who had shown compassion and kindness would continue to inspire their community for generations to come. And that was enough. As the months rolled on, spring arrived, bringing with it a sense of renewal and hope. The town, still basking in the warmth of the winter celebration, began to bloom with vibrant flowers and budding trees. Hank felt invigorated by the change in season, and he knew it was time to take Clara's idea of seasonal gatherings and put it into action. One sunny afternoon, Hank gathered community members at the coffee shop to discuss their upcoming spring event. The excitement in the air was palpable as he shared his vision for a spring festival that would not only celebrate the beauty of the season, but also honor the stories and memories that had shaped their community. "We could have a garden planting theme," Hank suggested, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Each family could bring a plant or seeds that hold special meaning to them. We'd share the stories behind them and plant them together in a community garden." The idea was met with enthusiastic nods and murmurs of agreement. Clara added, "We can set up booths for local artists and craftspeople, allowing them to showcase their work. We could also incorporate live music and food vendors, celebrating the flavors of spring." As the planning unfolded, the group began to brainstorm ideas for the festival, and soon they were buzzing with excitement. Hank felt a sense of purpose as he watched the community come together once more, weaving their stories into a new chapter. The day of the spring festival finally arrived, and the community center was transformed into a colorful spectacle. Banners adorned the walls, and tables filled with plants, crafts, and local artwork lined the hall. The scent of blooming flowers mingled with the aroma of freshly baked goods, creating an inviting atmosphere. Families arrived, children laughing and running from booth to booth, eager to explore everything the festival had to offer. Hank felt a swell of pride as he watched familiar faces and newcomers alike come together, united in celebration. As the festival kicked off, Hank took a moment to address the crowd. "Welcome, everyone. Today we celebrate not only the arrival of spring, but the community that has grown from shared experiences. Let's plant these seeds together, both in the ground and in our hearts. May they bloom into something beautiful." The crowd erupted into cheers, and the festivities began. Families gathered around tables to share the stories behind their plants, their voices filled with emotion as they recounted memories tied to each blossom. Hank felt the sense of connection deepen as laughter and joy filled the air. Throughout the day, locals showcased their crafts, from handmade jewelry to paintings inspired by the town's landscape. Musicians strummed guitars and sang folk songs, their melodies creating a backdrop of warmth and nostalgia. Hank joined in, feeling the rhythm of the community pulse around him. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the festival, Hank felt a profound sense of fulfillment wash over him. This gathering, born from the ashes of hardship, had blossomed into something beautiful, a celebration of resilience, love, and the unbreakable bonds formed through shared experiences. In that moment, he realized that the heart of the community was not just in the stories they shared, but in the connections they cultivated, connections that would continue to thrive and grow for generations to come. As laughter echoed around him and families embraced the spirit of spring, Hank understood that their journey was far from over. It was just beginning, and he was ready to embrace whatever came next. And for Hank, that was more than enough.